We'll put it on cloud. Okay, it's recording. Did you get a notification?
No, but I think I see that it's recording.
Nice one. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, this is the ClearSpace podcast, talking all things productivity today. And with us, we have Nick Mount. Do I say Nick Mount?
Let's go with Jesper.
Jesper.
Yeah.
Right. And Janus Briggs. And we're going to talk today about getting things done. Like how can you be productive and get the clear mind space that you need to be attentive, creative, and in the moment, and as productive as you possibly can. So today, Jesper is going to take over, and then let's see how productive can we get.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for the introduction, Janus. So getting things done is really just the art of stress-free productivity. So I think that's kind of what we're going to drill into today. So in terms of our agenda, what we're going to be discussing is, first of all, why do we need to get things done? So we have a few reasons for why we might want to be more productive in getting things done. We'll then present the Getting Things Done framework, which is, it was created by David Allen, and he wrote a whole book about it that we're going to kind of run through a little bit. And I think what we're specifically going to be reviewing today is the GTD process, or the Getting Things Done process. So this process comes down to 5 steps. So we're going to run through each of these individually just to see kind of specific things that you can do at each stage. So it starts with capturing everything on your mind before clarifying what it means, organizing it into your system, reflecting regularly, so usually through like a weekly or a monthly review. And finally, the last thing you do with everything on your list is to engage. So for this last step, we're going to run through 3 different models that you can use for making action choices. So first of all, why do we need to get things done? Well, there's quite a few different reasons for why we might want to get things done. First of which is stress. So we work in workplaces with just never-ending workloads, especially like in the knowledge economy. It's hard to know what exactly you should be doing at any specific time. And sometimes things fall through the cracks and you just end up having to do this thing urgently in the last minute. And that is pretty stressful. We also have kind of productivity and creativity that we're also always striving for as like companies and as like employees. We always want to get the most done possible, the best things possible, and actually work in a really creative way. And I think the final, and for me, one of the most important reasons to get things done is to enjoy a healthy work-life balance. So basically it is what it sounds like. You want to get your work done so you can enjoy everything outside of work. You need to have more than just a never-ending task list. So now that we've covered kind of why we weed to get things done.
I just fixed it, but it seems like it didn't appear in the screen yet. It's also great. It's also great, man. It's all about the roots. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. The weeds go deep and
exactly
multiply just like productive habits.
Yeah. This is what actually it's interesting, but in Buddhism, they a teacher that I follow, Rabina, and that I'm very impressed by. She always says that you've got to weed the garden, if your mind is like a garden, don't let the weeds take over. So I would look at this also as this system, as something that can help you weed your garden, so to speak. And so that you can choose to plant the right seeds, so that you have the mental space, the capacity, the time, the energy to plant the right seeds and get rid of the bad weeds, to have a nice garden, have a nice mind, have a happy life. And then this last thing that you mentioned, enjoying the work-life balance, and all of that from how I understand the system, that's how it starts. It starts just getting things out of your head. Is that right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that metaphor of weeding the garden. I think that really just shows that this methodology has so much to do with the mindfulness methodology, just like the
movement, philosophy, yeah, all of that.
Yeah, it's all about getting things kind of out of your head and just having what I'd like to call pure thoughts in a way. Like, you know what you're doing and you know what needs to get done. And that's the only thing
Yeah,
that matters. There's
exactly.
no point in worrying about things that are just kind of cramming up your head unnecessarily.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, later on, I guess you'll walk us over this, like how the system actually helps you to be in the moment and enjoy, you know, the work that you do, the tasks that are, you know, being with friends. You're actually there, you're present, and this system, like as you said, absolutely goes together with mindfulness, with all these things. So let's keep going.
Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, so yeah, like you said, we're running through the whole framework for getting things done today. So I think I mentioned this was created by David Allen, I think back in the 80s even. So he started a consultancy helping people, like helping executives getting things done. So he published this book to help people essentially simplify their workflow processes so that they kind of list out everything that's on their minds, and then they can tackle it in the most appropriate way by using their own getting things done system. So the three objectives with his methodology is firstly to capture everything that needs to get done. So this really comes down to anything that's on your mind, anything that you're like worrying about, that you might be anxious about, anything at all. It doesn't even necessarily have to have a next step, like a next action associated with it. Really, you just have to capture everything that's on your mind, put it down on paper, and then list out everything until you're totally happy, until moving on to the next step, which I guess we'll cover a bit more in the process part of this presentation. But another one of the objectives is to simplify the next actions so that we can then reduce the number of decisions we actually have to make each day. So rather than like throughout the day thinking, oh, I have to do this now and I have to do this now, we should have a pretty good idea at the beginning of the day what we're going to be working on throughout the day, just so we don't have to like take breaks to focus on planning. So focusing on what is the priority at each individual moment. We should have a good idea at the beginning of the day, even at the beginning of the work week or whatever. And the final objective is to curate and coordinate our content by recognizing all the commitments that we have to ourselves and to other people. So
Awesome.
Yeah, no questions. Cool. So this is the GTD process. This is really what it comes down to. So I mentioned the 5 steps at the beginning, but really it starts with capturing, which, as we can see, collects what has your attention. So it's anything on your mind. Clarifying is the second step. This is where we process what each thing means. So yeah, I'll cover it in one of the next slides. Organizing is putting things in your system so that you can then kind of tackle it in a really productive way, a really effective way to manage your different tasks. And then finally, we're reflecting. So we're reviewing our system, how it works, if anything might be missing from the system. And finally, we're engaging. So we're just doing, we're just getting things off of our action lists. So having said that, having run through that entire process, how do we actually get things done? So this is what the process really is trying to do. So let's go through each of the steps in getting things done, and we can have kind of a better idea of what this framework is actually doing. So first of all, first step we have to do is to capture. So really there's a few different things that we need to consider in this stage. The first one is to just write down anything that's on your mind. So like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're working on right now. It should just be anything that's on your mind, something you might need to work on next week or in a month, or even like a priority that you have 6 months down the line, but that you don't want to forget. Kind of just making a list of everything that's on your mind so that you can clear your mind and actually be able to focus in the moment. So once we've captured everything, we have a good idea of the scope of the work that we need to look through. So that's why it's really important to list everything before moving on to step 2. So once we've captured everything, we can then understand how we're going to clarify each thing in the next step.
Exactly. And one thing I could add is why this step is so important, and for me it has helped. Like the last couple of weeks that I've used the GTD system, this step was immensely helpful to just get the mind space, and why is I would say as David Allen says, our minds and brains are not designed or built to store a lot of these long-term tasks and information and to-dos and these sort of things. It's a very good tool, let's say, to engage in the moment and get the task done once you're focused, once you know what you're doing. But like, you can't, memorize all the little things that you have to do in your relationships, your work, your social life, responsibilities, chores, all of these things. So it's not a great system. Like for people who are into computers, the RAM memory, like the virtual memory, like it can only hold on so much bandwidth, or so much open tabs, let's say, and anything for the long term you want to store on your hard drive, obviously. So same as with our brains and minds. Like any tasks that you're not doing at the moment, it's best to store, as Jesper said earlier, and yeah, and when you're ready, then you can flash these things out, and go to the next steps. But the first part is immensely helpful. Just get them out of your head, because you're gonna forget them. and last thing, like regards to capture, like I heard that basically you don't want to think the same thought twice. That's one productivity nugget. Like, because it's just like it takes your energy, and if you haven't written it down, it just like keeps taking your mental capacity. It's somewhere in the back of your head. You just have to put it out in a trusted system, and then you have energy for better things and actioning on things. There you go. That's my 2 cents.
No, thanks for the input. I think that's a really good point. Actually, that's a really good point. I remember something in the book. I think David Allen said that our brains can hold between 3 and 5 different like action points. So if we have to do more than 3 to 5 things in the next 6 months, which I think most of us kind of have to do, it's best to have a clear system that tells you when and where you need to do different things, just to stay on top of everything. So yeah, capturing everything, make sure that you can kind of move on to the next thing, get everything out of your mind so you don't have to keep it in your mind while you're working on other things. So it's the first step in the process, clearing the mind. Great. Cool. So moving on from capturing, once we've kind of written down everything that's on our minds, we then have to clarify. So what we're specifically clarifying in this step is the next action associated with kind of each thing that we've written down. So the next physical thing that we have to do and the desired outcome. So David Allen in the book recommends a few kind of practices to be the most productive you can be when you're running through this process. So one of the first things is to always work the list from the top down. So it doesn't matter if you would rather clarify the steps for the third thing on your list, because the quickest way to get through everything is to just go first, second, third. You have to focus on like one thing at a time. So you list out the next action and desired outcome before you move on to the next thing. And in terms of what you're doing with each of these things, you're not necessarily performing the action yourself, or sometimes the action is to actually get someone else involved. So for example, you might be delegating to kind of a direct report or somebody who might be more appropriate to perform the task. So in that case, yeah, I think we have something on the next slide about that, but really clarifying is just down to what you actually have to do next about this thing that you've written down. I think just while we're here, it's fun to run through the 2-minute rule. So this is one of the most interesting things that I actually pulled out of the book, like one of the best things that I got out of this. So it's great to organize everything kind of in your system, but if something takes less than 2 minutes, you might just want to, instead of organizing it into your system, you might just want to kind of do it, knock it out, rather than kind of organizing it into your system and then getting to it when you have time, why not just like cross it off now? It might take just as long as actually like putting it into your system. Yeah, so I love the 2-minute rule. 2 minutes is an arbitrary number, but it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, depending on like how you feel. But if it takes like not that long at all, just usually I would try to go for it if possible. And just on the last point here, sometimes we are not talking about actions. Like we know that to do something rather than, we might not know the next physical action, but we know that we have to deliver this big project. So in that case, we have to plan the project. And that is technically the next action associated with that. So the next thing you have to do with a project might be to plan it out sometimes. So just in terms of this workflow, so this is the getting things done kind of workflow, and on the right side here. So you'll start with something just on your mind as like stuff, as David Allen calls it. It could be kind of actions, projects, or just reference material. Basically, you put it into your in basket, which could be the list that you have. But first you need to kind of understand what it is. So your action and desired outcome. But to be able to kind of systematize it better, you have to ask yourself first, is it actionable? And there's 3 things that aren't actionable. So some things are just trash. Like they're just not worth your time to do. It's on your mind, but you have to kind of tell yourself, yeah, this is trash and it's not worth me doing. And if it's not as clear if you should or shouldn't do something, if something's just not a priority at the moment, it might end up on your someday maybe list. And that's something that you might want to get to like 6 months down the line, but really you have other priorities at the moment. So you have that list for like, yeah, one day I'll try and get to this, but it's not absolutely urgent or a priority. And then finally, the last thing is reference material. So you might kind of pick up a piece of information that you're going to remember in a few months, or just you're always going to have to refer to at some point. So just being able to organize this in a good way is important. And yeah, I think it's a really good system. We have the 2-minute rule in here. So if the action takes less than 2 minutes, we can just do it right away. And if not, we can either delegate it or choose to do it at a later time by either adding it to our next actions or to the calendar. So just in terms of kind of all these different buckets that the workflow ends up in, I think there are 7 types of things to manage. So these are essentially the buckets that we're talking about with this workflow. So if something is a project, we add it to our project lists so that we have all of our projects that we're working on kind of in some sort of a system, whether it's like a list or an Excel sheet or just a list of papers. But basically, we've written down all the actions for each of the projects in this list. We also have support material. So to help move projects along, we might need specific information related to that. We have calendar actions and information. So things that are specifically time sensitive that we might need to know, like when we go to that meeting next Wednesday, we might organize that into our calendars just to know that at the specific time, or we might add it to our kind of archive so that we can refer to it whenever we need to. We also have next action lists, which is for me one of the, and I think for most people, one of the most important things. So this could be like your daily to-do list, or this could be like a very specific kind of action list. So I think David Allen brings up the example of like phone calls. So if you need to make a certain amount of phone calls in a week, it's best to batch that up into one list and just run through all of them in like one afternoon, if possible. That way, like you already have the phone, you're in the right place to be doing the thing. Like when you have groups of tasks that are similar to each other, you can come up with creative ways to kind of power through them quickly so that you're in that kind of call mode or whatever you might be working on. And I think that's a really cool point. In terms of the 5th thing we have here that we need to manage, we have waiting for lists. So this is for anyone that we've delegated to. We can check in with them on a regular basis, whether daily or weekly, just to see how they're kind of doing with the project or the task that we've asked them to help out on. We also have reference material and someday maybe lists, which I've already talked through. So yeah, I think it could be good to mention here that getting things done is it's a very simple framework, and a lot of it can be quite like obvious. But I think the beauty of it is that it lists out everything in just a simple way. Because some of these things are things that I might not have actually thought about before. For example, like a waiting for list is essentially an action list where I'm checking in with people who are helping me out with a task. And it's helping to stay on track of people and make sure that it's a priority of theirs just as much as it is of yours, so that you can kind of progress projects along smoothly. So yeah.
It's a nice one. And I like the next actions list, because like this is something like we just moved houses with my girlfriend, and there's like so many things to do, and like for example so many things to also buy, like new things. And instead of just every time like we get an idea, oh like we need I don't know, toaster or like you know, a kettle or whatever, we just put them on a list every time, like oh yeah we need this, we just put it on, we use Todoist. And like it works great because like once we have like you know, larger block of time, we just like go crazy and like go through this list, and there's like 20 things to buy, and we do everything in, you know, half an hour or something. And that just works so much better than just reacting to every little thing that, you know, comes across you or comes in your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that really boils down to the whole kind of bulking. So like doing things in bulk. So you have a custom list for specific things that you need to do, like, and what you're talking about is like a custom next action list. So next time you go to the store, you have like a shopping list. And if you need to move houses, you have a specific action list to actually move that project along. And yeah, that is something that I'm working on at the moment as well, because I'm also moving house soon, moving to a different country. So next action list, great for productivity to get tasks kind of underway.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jesper's moving to Sweden, for anybody who didn't know.
Yeah, found out last week, and moving this all along now. Hopefully, awesome. I can be pretty productive about it.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah, exactly. So you've got a system that you can use to make it efficient and painless.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have one question though. Like here, you see the defer it. Like what I feel is like also very important is choosing what to do and what not to do. So how would you kind of suggest, or what's your take on like which tasks to drop, which ones to keep? Because that's, you know, that can be pretty important. Like I think, who was it who said nothing is worse than working effectively on the wrong things? I don't remember who it was, but I mean, yeah, how do you choose what to focus on, what to put as a project?
Absolutely. So yeah, I think you had a few great questions there. So in terms of like the what is a project? A project is just anything that needs more than one step to get done. It's something that you essentially have to kind of plan through. We have a bit later in terms of how you pick what to prioritize in the moment, but in terms of what might end up in trash versus what might end up on your next actions list, I think the difference there is a matter of priority. And I know this is something we've talked about in the past in terms of like urgency versus importance. And sometimes it's just really important to get the most urgent things done. So that might end up at the top of your next actions list. But really what we should be working towards is working on the most, like our highest priority tasks and projects should be the ones that bring us the greatest results. The things that we can kind of refer to and show like an impact. Like whatever it is that we might be doing, we have to prioritize it in some way. And yeah, I don't want to give away too much because we have a section in the engage. So in the last step we're actually doing, that I think could be quite interesting to run through.
Awesome. Go for it.
Cool. So just in terms of after we've captured in the first step and clarified our next actions in the second step, now we have to transfer everything that we've clarified into the different lists. So we have the next action lists, where we'll put all of our we have a lot of next action lists. So we'll have one for our daily to-do list and our priority to-do list. We'll have one for specific types of actions that we'll need to do. And really, I think before you start with the getting things done framework, it could be good to just brainstorm a lot about these different lists that you have. So what kind of next action lists do you want to do? Like, what does your role entail? What are your main kind of functions? And then grouping these all together based on how similar they are. So I think next action list is definitely something to brainstorm, because it might not always be as straightforward. And I think that can definitely be I think we can all improve our next action lists if we have a lot of different kind of roles, or a lot of different functions within our current roles. Mm-hmm. In terms of project lists, we have to list down everything that might take more than one step. So we can then kind of, for each project, list out everything that needs to be done to move it from kind of start to completion. And then we're organizing things that we need to delegate into waiting for lists, just to keep up with the progress other people are making on our priorities. Calendar actions is for time sensitive information and actions. So if you need to call Sarah at 5 p.m. next Wednesday, and that's the only time that she's available, that should be in a calendar, so that you know, okay, so hopefully it pops up with like a notification on your screen, and you know to call her. And if there's anything specific, like an agenda for that call, you can add that to the kind of event as well, just so you can refer to that when you call her. There's also kind of reference material archives. So there's a rule here that no matter what information you're looking for, it should firstly either be in your system, or like if you've organized it into your system, it should not take more than 1 minute to get it. And I think really in the digital age, because the system was created in the 80s, it really shouldn't take more than 30 seconds to find a specific piece of information that you're looking for.
Or less. That's crazy. Like 1 minute.
Yeah.
I think our brains just like get like distracted, like already in 5 seconds. It's like, oh, it was somewhere in Facebook. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Like, what are my friends doing? Yeah, crazy. So yeah, I guess the closer, the better. How do you personally, for example, organize, or how do you keep track of all these things? Do you do it digitally? I think you mentioned you do it in a paper, like old school. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think the system that I use might be it could be a good topic for another kind of episode. But essentially, I started using the bullet journal methodology. So this is from kind of what I've seen. It's just it's a really practical application of getting things done, where I have it, right here. So basically, I just kind of list out everything that I need to do on a daily basis. So I'll have my next action lists for each day, kind of in this list. And then I'll migrate things in every day, depending on what my priorities are for the day. Each week I can kind of run through and look at what I've missed out on the last week. You can have a specific page that might be like either going into specific actions for a project or a group of things that you need to get through. I think there's a lot of creative ways that you can go through these things. I think when it comes to calendar actions, that's the best one to do digitally. Otherwise, when it comes down to kind of reference material, I am a big fan of Google Docs. I like just listing out everything onto a Google Doc and then naming it something that I'll remember kind of whenever. So I'll, like, for example, for work, I have a Google Doc with all my email templates. So every month, maybe every other week, I'll send very similar emails to the same group of people. So I'll list all these things out into a Google Doc, and I know exactly what it's called because I named it email templates for Jesper. I can type that into my browser. It comes up in like 2 seconds. I just scroll down, copy and paste the email, paste it in, make a change like to what date it is, and then just send it off. So that kind of like productivity things.
Awesome.
I think that could be good when it's like digital.
Yeah. Lately, I'm trying out this Notion. It's also for note taking tool, a tool,
Nice.
or just Apple Notes, and that seems to be working a bit better for me than Google Docs. Like, of course, I use Google Docs for work, but it's just easier to access, easier to find information. Yeah, but you know, Google Docs, that's classy. So
Mhm. Is Notion a bit more like Evernote, or what is why is
yeah,
it?
it's similar. It's like it's maybe the best way to kind of categorize it. It's like a wiki for yourself, like Wikipedia, where you just like put all your thoughts, projects, everything, and you can easily organize it, and it can serve as a website. So you can just, similar to a Google Doc, you just can send a link to someone, they can collaborate or just view it, and it's just super simple and beautiful. That's why I like it, and very easy to organize things, drag and drop. Yeah, love it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll have to get into that. I think you shared something with me on Notion.
Yeah, you haven't looked at it yet.
It's been a busy day. Busy
Fair
day, yeah.
enough. No worries. It's not on your priorities list. You can check it out another time, I guess.
I'll have to add it to my system.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Let's keep
Cool.
going. This is
Yeah.
good stuff.
Nice. Yeah. So once we've organized everything into our lists, um, this is kind of one natural planning model that we might use. And I mentioned it earlier, but a lot of getting things done, a lot of stuff in this framework is really quite straightforward. So when we're trying to plan projects efficiently and effectively, really there's 5 things that we need to be doing to have the best kind of plan laid out. So first we need to define the purpose and the principles. So what we're actually trying to accomplish and what we believe in. And then the next step is to vision the outcome. So to have an idea of what we actually want to accomplish with it before we then start brainstorming different possible solutions and then organizing these and then actually identifying the next actions. So the final step is to understand the next few things that we need to do to actually move this project or whatever else we might be working on along.
What is the principles? Is it kind of like values? Like, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so that is just listed out in the methodology. I think it comes down to like you might have a purpose, and then so you'll have a mission and you'll have a vision. So it's kind of not just what you need to accomplish, but also what you believe in, so that before you start planning it, you can do it in your own way,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice one.
Cool. So the fourth step after we've kind of organized everything into our system is to reflect. So the biggest thing, the biggest part of reflection in getting things done is the weekly review. So this is where we pick a time each week to check in with ourselves. We'll review the big picture of our system and again, clear the mind. So we want to make sure that it's up to date and organized. So yeah, our next action lists, our calendars, reference material, project plans, everything that could possibly be on our minds, we want to make sure that that's organized into the system so that it's not weighing us down all the time. Like when you close down the computer at the end of the workday, I don't think anything should be rattling around in your head, but especially at the end of the week, I think you should enjoy a nice weekend without thinking about what you have to do for work. So for that reason, I like to do a weekly review at the end of a Friday. Just write down anything that is kind of important or a priority for next week so that I can kind of hit the ground running and not have to think too much on Monday morning or stress out on Sunday evening. So yeah, I think reflection is a really big part of the getting things done methodology.
For sure. And like for me, I've tried a lot of things in past where you make a big to-do list, you get a new notebook, everything is going well, but you forget to kind of follow up on it and reflect on it regularly. So those things just like kind of slip through cracks, and then you next thing you know, you already forgot about the notebook that's like collecting dust somewhere. So yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, I guess that's a kind of task or project on itself, right? Like you kind of have to schedule this in in your system, in your diary as well. Yeah, it's easy to neglect it, I guess.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think so. Yeah. So I've blocked out a 2 hour kind of session at the end of my Friday each week, just to kind of review everything that's actually going on, all the different projects that, all the different actions that aren't kind of up to date. Um, yeah, yeah, reflection, really important. I think it comes down to, you probably know about this, but like the Japanese kind of concept of ikigai, if I'm
Yeah.
pronouncing that right, like the art of continual improvement. So the idea is like if every day you improve by 1%, after a year, you've gone 37x, like you've improved by 37 times what you started with. So I think the weekly review is just a time to kind of brainstorm like how your system is working, what the different priorities of the system are, just to check in with yourself. And it's a scheduled time to get to know your system and understand how it works. And I think it's really important just for that reason.
Nice one.
Sweet. So this is something that I've been alluding to throughout the call. So essentially we have 3 models here, the next few slides, on making action choices. And they're at kind of different, you would use the models at different times at the day. So basically the first model that we're talking about is the 4 criteria model for choosing actions in the moment. So really there's 4 criteria in this model that will determine at any point in the day what you might want to be working on. So the first 3 are kind of about your environment and about how you're feeling kind of at any present moment. So it'll start with the context. So I think in terms of like the call list that I mentioned earlier, if you have to make a bunch of phone calls, it would be good to be near a phone and maybe in like a quiet room so that you can focus on the phone calls when you're actually planning on doing that. So knowing the context of where you're at, like physically, could be really important for actually choosing what to work on in the moment. There's also time available. So if you know a project, or if the next action is going to take 30 minutes to an hour, maybe even 2 hours, you probably wouldn't start that 15 minutes before your lunch break, because the idea is that we should always be aiming to complete tasks that are on our list. So if we have 15 minutes before lunch, we might either want to tackle something that would take less than 15 minutes, or we would like to delay our lunch break. Just making sure that we have appropriate amount of time before we start working on an action. That way we don't have to kind of start the action twice and lose energy in that way. And then the third point here is the energy available. So in a similar way, like right after lunch, some of us experience kind of energy dips, whether we've had like a carb-rich lunch or whatever. At certain times of the day, we just don't have as much energy as, for example, the first 3 hours of the day, right after we wake up. So it's important to kind of do our most important tasks in the beginning of the day when we have the most energy, maybe even like right after a nap. I guess people might be napping a bit more now that we're working from home. So really, I think just after sleeping is a great time to work on high priority projects that take a lot of like creative thinking. And then saving easier tasks for like just after lunch is what I usually try to do. And then of course, this last point, priority, is one of the most important things in terms of what we should be working on each day. So like we have to know why we're working on specific projects and actions, and just focusing on the ones that bring the biggest kind of impact to us.
This is so interesting. Like I was just thinking that it's kind of like a system for lazy people, because like it will show you, or I mean, you're going to organize it in a way to use the least amount of energy, least amount of like mental capacity, like all this stuff, just to and time as well, just to get these things done. So you can either do more things, or you can you can just do the things that you need and then just enjoy some free time. So that's, for me, it's like, I think it was Bill Gates who said that he said like that you need to hire lazy people because they're gonna find the most efficient way to get the job done, something like that.
Absolutely. I love that quote. That's a great one.
Nice one.
Cool. Yeah, so that is basically how you can decide in the moment what you should be working on. Yeah, so we have two more models in terms of making action choices. Second one, also pretty interesting. So there's different kinds of work that you can do in terms of identifying daily work. So the first thing that we might have to do is predefine our work. So this is what I was talking about before, like at the beginning of a day or the beginning of a week, you will probably have quite a few action points on your action lists, and you'll know what you want to prioritize. So usually we'll want to be working on these things that we've identified already as priorities. However, sometimes work shows up throughout the middle of the day, and this is often known as like ad hoc work. And really, we should only be working on ad hoc work when it's like a priority, if it's urgent, or if it is actually more important than everything that we have defined as our important work. So everything on our action list should be the most important things that we need to do today, this week. And we should only prioritize ad hoc work if it's really a priority. We don't want to get distracted from our most important tasks. And I think really productivity comes down to that, just knowing what you should be working on in the moment. And if you can plan this at the beginning of the day by defining your work, more power to you. I think that's just how you can be productive like throughout the day. So there's a few different ways to define your work. And this comes down to a few steps. So the first thing is really to clear up your in tray. And I think what David Allen describes as the in tray is any list that you have like an action, just action points on, or anything that might be on your mind, you should know what the next action should be. You should also break down your projects into more actionable steps, so that rather than sorting out like a giant project, you'll say like, yeah, I will kind of plan the project. I will do this in the project. I'll do the second thing in the project, just so that you can organize those things into your next action lists, and then tackle those throughout the day. And we're also adding tasks to our lists as we process. So really, this is just the different ways to identify daily work. Does that make sense, kind of this model?
Yeah, this is great. Actually, for me, the breaking down projects into actionable steps, this was the like it's kind of simple thing, okay? But for me, it's always been the kind of struggle area. Like I think I always know what is the most efficient, like, or the right thing to do, and any particular moment. But if it's a bigger project or something, like I can get stuck. I know what to do, I know why, and then how this goal will look like, but I don't see the small steps. So just by like having this action to do regularly, like has helped me a lot. Because I mean, you can see in your calendar, you schedule like a big project, but you're like, oh, like where do I start? What's going on? So what I do now, like based also like on this system, like also I think what you suggested is just breaking it down. And that's like a separate thing that I do. At some point I have scheduled time. It's just like breaking the projects down into smaller tasks, doing a bit of research, adding it there next to the task, and then just leaving it, like not actually moving into action, but yeah, just doing all these pre moves. Like, is this the right way to do it? Like, seems to be working for me. Yeah. Is this what we're supposed to be doing?
Absolutely, yeah. I think the issue is, like you said, it's knowing where to start. And if you haven't kind of clearly defined everything that you physically have to do with a project, it can be kind of draining, especially like on the last slide, we ran through kind of what needs to be right to actually do something. And if you don't have the energy to plan a project whenever you have to work on an action associated with that project, it really makes it a lot harder if you haven't listed out each of the action points. So it's much easier to refer to a list of things that you need to do than to constantly throughout the day recreate that sort of list.
Mm.
So it's all about like reducing the number of decisions we have to make. And yeah, I'm glad that you've found that to be really productive.
Yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, also like it's just you never like I never think that like things are gonna take as much time, and I'm just like, yeah, I just need to do this quick thing or like write an article about this or do some client work or something. But like it's like once you start actually planning, you're like, oh, okay, this is first of all not a 2 minute task. Then you're like, oh, okay, this is like a half an hour, and then you're like, okay, like maybe 2 hours, like in the end.
Yeah,
So and then you actually, yeah, for me, it helps to estimate the more realistic amount of time that's necessary for any of those things to actually get done, and it also relieves a lot of stress because as you said, like you're just not stuck, like, okay, I'm on the stage 3 out of 10, or like I'm on this step, and just moving along, and you have just a very clear picture of what you need to do at any given moment, how long is it going to take, where to find information. So that's fantastic. It works very well for me.
absolutely. Nice, man. Cool. So then we'll move on to the final model and maybe even the final slide of this presentation. Um, but I do think this is one of my favorite models from the whole book. So this is a 6-level model for reviewing your work. So there's 6 different horizons here. So the top one is purpose and principles. The second one, Horizon 4, is vision. Horizon 3 is goals. Horizon 2 is areas of focus and accountability. Horizon 1 is the current projects, and what we think of as the ground floor is the kind of current tasks that we're working on. So really what we can use this model to do is to list out everything that we need to do at each of the horizons. And David Allen recommends working from like the ground floor. So before you can really plan out your current projects or focus your areas of focus and accountability, it helps to know specific current tasks that you're working on before you then kind of level up. If you know what you're working on a daily basis, on a weekly basis perhaps, you can then move on to the next step, which is then planning out all the projects. So once you've covered off the ground floor where you're actually like actioning points, you can move up to planning your projects. Each project is going to be, each project contains several tasks. So I think that's kind of how the model works. So after you've planned out, after you know what your specific tasks you're working out throughout the week, you can move up to Horizon 1 where you're planning out specific projects, which with each of the tasks associated with each project. When you move up to Horizon 2, you're then thinking more broadly about your role and the different areas that you should be focusing on and the different accountability that you have to different people. And this isn't really even limited to your work role. This is also related to kind of your relationships. Like if you're a parent, like what kind of accountability and you have to other people in your life. But of course, it also does come down to kind of the role that you have and what people expect of you in that role. So just knowing like how you can be good in your role, like all the different components of that and all the projects that are listed and really important to your role. I think that's just a really good way to kind of determine the importance of what you should be working on. Like, I think it starts off like quite short term, and then the higher the horizon, the longer term the planning is. So after we've moved beyond the areas of focus and accountability, we have the goals horizon, which is things that we can't really accomplish right now, but it's things that we want to accomplish in 1 to 2 years. So based on our current role, these are things that we want to kind of work towards and different components of the goals that we have. So different projects that we might want to start, different roles that we might be targeting. Basically, kind of short-term career moves is a big part of this. Before moving up to Horizon 4, which is a bit of a longer term, it could be, I think, between 3 and 5 years, I think is what he says in the book, where we just have an idea of kind of what we believe we should be doing. So whether it's kind of focusing on something that's more ecological or environmentally friendly or just ethical in a way, if that's like an internal value that we have, or whether that's kind of adapting to trends in the market that is kind of like knowing your company needs to be going in this direction in the next 3 to 5 years. It's not necessarily a goal, but it is something that needs to happen at some point. So yeah, after goals, we have vision, and then after vision, we have our purpose and principles. So once we basically know everything else about kind of what we're doing in life, it's really helpful to kind of plan out our purpose, our principles, and everything that we can do, all the different projects and goals that we can actually develop just to make sure that we are living in accordance with our like top values. So yeah, this is the last model for the kind of getting things done framework, engaging.
This is great. I wonder, like, I know like there's this like Simon Sinek's movement with start with why and these things. And for me also personally, it's oftentimes just important to reconnect with the whole, the vision, the purpose, like what I value in life, like what do I want to achieve to everything I do. So I wonder if like, do we have to stick to this model like in this order? Sometimes I would like to change it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is it's quite a broad model. And I think David Allen says to start from the ground floor and work your way up. I don't necessarily think that's the only way to do it, but I think if you take the perspective that you already have responsibilities and things that you need to work on,
Yeah.
I think you can I think this really comes down to the whole framework where it's like you're trying to get everything out of your head so that you can think completely freely. And it's easier to kind of plan out your purpose and principles if you know that you've kind of done everything that you need to for this week already, that you don't have any deadlines for tomorrow. I think it kind of frees
That's
up
a
the
great
brain.
point. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the whole clear space, you can't have it you can't be fully present, and then maybe you can't do your best work and like creating this vision and purpose and all these things if something's like bothering, nagging you, at the back of your head. So it definitely makes sense.
Absolutely. But I think Simon Sinek has a really good point in that people need to know why they're doing what they're doing. I just think in kind of this model, it makes most sense to start from the bottom up.
It's like practical, right?
It's just really practical implementing it. Yeah. But you should probably have a good idea of why you're doing what you're doing generally in your career anyway. But maybe you can kind of, the goal of this is to really just focus on getting things done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the name speaks for itself.
Absolutely. Cool.
Right,
So I think
great.
that was it for kind of the agenda for this week. Were there any points that kind of you were thinking about throughout this that you might want to discuss more? Like, I know you asked questions throughout, but this could be a good opportunity to kind of wrap up any loose ends.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's actually a lot of new stuff for me. I've started reading the book. I've used the system for last week and a half, and I see a lot of improvement and a lot more clarity, a lot less stress or anxiety. I mean, there wasn't much stress before, but you just feel a bit of tension while doing things and just getting distracted by next tasks and emails. So this was great, and I'm trying to do all this digitally. It seems to be working for me for now, but I know you mentioned in another conversation that David Allen kind of suggests to use to start with a paper, like pen and paper method. Maybe you can tell a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think when I first read Getting Things Done, I had a very similar idea in my head. I also thought that it would be a lot more effective to kind of do everything digitally, to have these kind of lists and not waste paper. I think there's a lot of reasons to want to do it digitally. And I think the reason that I eventually moved over to the bullet journal was because I was looking for something more paper-based. specifically because I felt like digital things can disappear more easily. So if you have written something down in your notebook, it's a lot easier to know that it's there because it takes up physical space. It's not like a Google Doc that that can just disappear if you don't think about it again. And I think so that's like the first reason for me is that it's a lot easier to remember things because I'll just like flip back a few pages and it'll be in my system. Another reason that I thought it was good to go with the paper-based system is because a few months ago I was trying to plan out everything that I wanted to do, like on a weekly schedule, kind of action lists and that kind of stuff in a Google Sheet and a Google Doc. But that meant that I had to turn on my computer or turn on my phone every time that I wanted to kind of look at what I should be working on. And for me, that caused a few issues when it came to like notifications. So like turning on my phone at the end of the day, just to kind of pull up what my nighttime routine is, it ended up distracting me from my actual nighttime routine. Because there would be a notification from Facebook, a notification from kind of Instagram and all these different places. And
Oh my God,
for me,
man.
it was really difficult to kind of avoid that and have a clear mind. I didn't have a clear space to actually, just focus on what I actually wanted out of it. And with a paper-based system, that nothing fancy is happening. It is what it is. And it's the same thing that it was when you last kind of wrote it down. And for me, I think it's good to have this kind of context where my bullet journal, my notebook, is just the place where I organize my life. My laptop is a place where I write stuff, and my phone is a place where I get kind of social media out of my system. So basically, that's how I've tried to organize my life a bit more.
Nice one. Yeah. You mentioned this before, and it's a nice way to do it. I use all devices for work, but I just try to block out as much as I can, just delete all social apps, block any social media on computers and these kind of things. But still, I mean, you can open some to-do lists, some of these kind of things, trying to be productive. If you're not fully there and you're a little bit tired, like you just like realize 2 hours later you've been watching, like, I don't know, cat videos or something. So it can happen. So I definitely get the idea, like for having it like analog, like having a notebook. But let's see. I'm gonna still persist with all the digital stuff. I like how it synchronizes, and hopefully it works out. But like it definitely, it feels like it takes much more kind of mental capacity to work with these lists digitally than maybe it would be on a notebook. Although it seems easier, you can just drag things around, like add labels and schedule things. But you very, like, I very often end up like just like, oh, here's an email, so like you start working. It's like, oh, whoa, man, like we were doing some some planning and these things for the lists, for the action items. And crazy.
I know.
It's an endless fight.
Just because technology is so customizable, like once you write like a next action list, you might not just start working right away. You might be like, oh, this isn't the best font, and like change the font, and like, oh, the theme is like not what I really want. Like it could look so much prettier. Like it can always be improved.
Once you write like
a notebook, it's there. Like unless you want to start a new page, like you're not changing it.
Exactly. Yeah. You end up like, I don't know, I end up like, oh, what is the psychology of this color? And then just like, oh God.
Absolutely. But yeah, if you do manage to get your digital system working, I think that could be a great topic for kind of another episode. So if you kind of over the next few weeks manage to get that up and running in a way that you want to present to everyone, I'd be up for that.
Pressure's on.
Pressure is on, man.
Awesome. Yeah, let's try. Absolutely. There's I feel it could help a lot of people. There's loads of apps. There's loads of free tools that absolutely can synchronize things, and it seems to be working very well for me. So I guess stay tuned.
Definitely. Nice.
That's it.
Cool. Yeah. Nice one.
Awesome. Right.
So
Right.
the
Well,
episode of the Clear Space podcast.
thanks a
Yeah,
lot, Jesper. Thanks for all the good information.
yeah,
Good nuggets. I'll probably rewatch it myself.
definitely. I think it'll be good to see how this podcast is kind of going. I think it'll be really fun to start this kind of discussing productivity, mindfulness, all the good stuff, business management, different kinds of theories that people would be interested kind of in
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah. To live a better, happier life, and getting actually the things done that you want to get done in this life. So I don't know if this was David Allen, but it seems like it was him who said that we're here to do things, to action. So and I feel a lot of people want to do and be productive and want to achieve a lot of stuff and get things done, but it's tough in this environment. It's tough when you're trying to keep up with friends, with news, politics, with your work, and there's so many gadgets, so many apps, and things to try. There's just so much that it's hard to get the things done that really matter. So for me, this was kind of my um, kind of wish that I want to clear up for myself, for my friends, and anybody who's listening. To how can we be productive and happy in these crazy times? So hopefully we create some good content that is interesting and that helps people. That's my kind of vision and principles.
Yeah, that's our purpose. Absolutely. No, I think it's a really good way to put it. And I think getting things done is like a really good first episode in terms of productivity. Because for me, that was like the first book that I read, and I think it's pretty theoretical, but it also has a bit of a structure to it. So I think this is a great starting point for anyone who wants to be more productive in their work, so that they can. And to be honest, you can use the system to be more productive in your personal life as well. But I think the end goal is to actually be more productive in work and have a good work-life balance.
Mhm.
And I think if people take just one nugget away from this podcast, I'll be really happy.
Yeah, and just try it out, because for me, a lot of things first like sounded just like common sense. Oh yeah, I mean that's easy peasy. But then actually when you do it and you do it in this specific order, and you spend time on each specific part of the system, like capture, you just go crazy, brainstorm, like put all the ideas, tasks, like whatever you need to do in a list. It just already frees up the space, and sometimes we do this for work, but I mean you mentioned that the system is mainly for work. I believe it can work very well for relationships, like insanely well. And all these steps, there's just some magic to it, and you have to try it out and see for yourself, what happens, and yeah, just try it out, see how it works, and I have a feeling that it might work for a lot of people.
Nice. Yeah, that's what we can only hope.
That's it, right, man? Let's finish this off.
Cool.
This has been the Clear Space podcast. So stay tuned. And if there's a subscribe button, feel free to subscribe and follow our work. There's more to come. It's somewhere around.
Wherever it might be, subscribe today. Let us know if you have any questions. Leave a comment. Send us an email once we have that up and running. We're always happy to hear from anyone on social media. Please let us know any questions, or if you have any thoughts on this episode. This has been the Clear Space podcast with Giannis and Jesper. Yeah, see you soon, I hope.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.